Hi everyone, welcome back to another hilt video. This time it's Roman Props MK1 for Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber hilt from episode 4, A New Hope. This is one of my favorite hilts that I own. It's a static. I have weathered it to match the Chronicles book reference photos as best as I can, and this is primarily what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So when you purchase the MK1 from Roman Props, it doesn't look exactly like this. So the grenade section will be a lot blacker. Even the weathered versions, it'll be a darker sort of black here. There's none of these marks and things. So I thought I'll just talk a little bit about how I got it to look a little bit more like the Chronicles version. First of all, a big shout out to Tintoy. Really great advice, tips. He shared a lot of how he weathered his saber. So he gave me a lot of helpful advice along the way. I will link his page down below. He's got a lot of great content as well. To start off with, I think the biggest, most of the work was really done on the clamp. As you can see here, this has been heavily modified. And so the way I did that was, first of all, the first step is to add this chrome tape. This is just sticky foil tape. So what you do is you take a marker and you kind of look at the reference pictures and you kind of mark the outline of where it should go. One on each side. Just mark the board, just draw like a little line there, around here, and then just cut it up and stick it on. And then I just scratched it up a little bit so it doesn't look as smooth and shiny. And that is definitely, I don't know if it's chrome tape that's on the prop, but there's definitely two different shades of metal. So that will give it that effect. The next step would be all these black and brown marks. So this is all paint, but I just went over random spots here and there, like on the transistors, the edge of it, the edge of the clamp here, the lever, the different spots, and sort of different shades of brown and some black. But it's important to try to blend it in and rub off as much as you can, either with your fingertip or just a little piece of cloth, so it doesn't look obvious, because if it looks like there's paintbrush work, then it won't look right. It'll look kind of fake. Whereas this makes it, if it's sort of uneven like that, then it almost looks like it's natural sort of wear or rust or what have you. So over here particularly, it looks really good. It looks like there's a sort of a crack in here that's kind of got rusted over time. And this is all just paint. It's very easy. If I could do it, you can. I'm really not very good at things like this, but it wasn't too bad. It's just trial and error. And after all that paint and all these scuff marks and things, I then added these two rings that you see here. There's one over here, and there's one on that side, and these come from, these are definitely on the Chronicles photo. I don't know what they are, but I actually used a little paper clip. But you can use, you know, a chain, a thin chain of any kind, whether it's a keychain or like an old piece of jewelry that you don't need. So you drill a hole there into the clamp, and one over here just beneath the R, and you just kind of loop it in and loop it from behind, and then again bend it inward so it sits between those two fins on the booster section, and that stops it from, I mean, it does move a bit, but it doesn't matter. It's secure from behind the clamp. Same over here. These two screws over here, it's not obvious to me on the Chronicles photo, but the MR, so there's a there's an MR prop that I got some reference pictures of, and that was very close to the original prop, and that has two brass screws, one over here just by the side of the clamp, and one on the other side somewhere there in the middle. And that, I have used the wrong screw, but that's because I couldn't find the right screw heads. So these are cut and glued. I didn't, I didn't drill them in or anything like that. I didn't tap a hole into the clamp. It was just easier to cut it and glue it on. They need to be brass, but they do need to be a lot smaller than this, like less than half the size of that. That is gigantic. If I do find the right screw one day, I'll replace them quite easily. But they need to be, not a Phillips head, but straight like this. And brass in color, and a little bit more rounded, so not sort of straight like that. But for now, I thought they look fine. I weathered them a bit with brass black and a little bit of paint to make them look more aged. I think overall they match the rest of the clamp. They look nice with it, so I just left it for the time being. Yeah, so as I said, most of the work was done on the clamp. But moving on to the booster section, I really didn't do much for the booster. All I did was I just sanded it down a little with the Dremel, just to expose the metal underneath those oxidized areas at the tips. And then what I did, that brownish stuff that you're seeing there, that's just paint. So I just went over it with some paint and then just rubbed it off to try to kind of blend it so it almost looks like rust. It needs to look random like that. So not every single one, don't do every single one. If you do this, skip a few or do it heavily on one side and not a lot on the next, and so on. It needs to be like random. The more random it is, the more realistic it looks. I did nothing for the pommel cubes. I have one of the sort of the newer versions of the MK1 with accurately chromed pommel cubes. If you have the flat, the dull finish one, then you will need to get that chrome plated. But fortunately, I didn't have to do that. And moving on to this, which is my favorite part in terms of weathering, the grenade section. So that obviously will not look like that when you purchase a hilt. It'll just be a flat kind of black, might be slightly weathered. So what I did with this is I removed it from the rest of the hilt. I soaked it in a solution of salt water, and I left it outdoors, in a bag, which was opened to allow the air in and for the oxygen to kind of do the rest of the work in terms of rust. So everything that you're seeing in between the grooves is 100% natural rust. And it gave it that beautiful orange color. Now that took some time. Depending on where you live, what kind of humidity you have, obviously it could take longer or shorter. For me, living in the UK with the current weather conditions that we have this time of year, it took about, I want to say, over a week. I mean, I would check on it every day. I might give it a rinse, change the water, just move it about a bit in the bag, swirl it around, but it didn't take too long. You'd have to be a little bit patient with it, depending on how rusty you want it again, of course. Once I was done, I dried it off, and I noticed that the orange on the surface of the cubes, as opposed to inside the grooves, became a lot darker, and so it was less obvious. So what I did is I used a brown shoe polish rather than paint. Again, that's because I don't want to show any kind of brush strokes. The shoe polish will come with like a sponge applicator, so it's a lot gentler, and if you just run it across every one of the cubes, just very gently, you don't want to squeeze it too much, you don't want the polish or the paint to drip in between, just run it across and it gives it that nice reddish brown finish. Over here as well on top, just to kind of finalize that look. And that's all I did for the grenade. For the wind vane, this is one of the newer ones. I got this from a friend of mine called Colin, so thanks Colin. This is a more accurate one with the stamping. Roman is currently selling these on his store, but I had the old one without the stamping. Again, I just sanded this down because it was black to start with. Just sand down. And then again with the brown shoe polish, you can see here little random blotches here and there, just to give it a little bit more. Again here in the neck, on top of the brass. I think it looks really great between the brass and that reddish brown. It looks gorgeous. And finally the emitter here, that booster section. There's nothing really here except for again, I sanded it. A little bit of black paint to begin with, I rubbed it off, and then a bit more of the brown shoe polish. Again, you can see the strokes here, and rub those off. Just kind of blend it in, work it together until you're satisfied with how it looks. So it kind of looks like it's almost like a burnt effect. Again here on top. That center there, that is a blade plug, and that was a shiny, almost a chrome finish from Romans. That I soaked in a little bit of aluminium black, turned it dark black, and then I just scratched it up with some steel wool. And that's about it. So again, this is more closely resembles the reference pictures that we see in the Chronicles book. And it's got some elements from the MR prop, like the brass screws over there. And I just think it looks more aged and worn and matches more of an older Obi-Wan Kenobi that's been on Tatooine for years with his saber exposed to the elements. I'm not sure how screen accurate it is as such. It's probably more of like a post-production look. But I love it. I really enjoyed weathering it. It was a fun project, very rewarding, and it just makes it stand out a little bit, makes it a little bit more unique in my opinion. So thanks for everyone who helped me with this. I talked to a lot of friends, Martin, Tintoy, Colin. Yeah, a lot of people gave me some helpful tips and advice about weathering and such. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.